Okay. All right. Okay, let me go through and welcome everybody. So welcome, Ray. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, Adina Malka. Great to see you.
Always.
David, welcome. It's great to see you, even without the old rap. Good to see you. Yes. Okay, let's see. Who do we have next? Next up on my screen is Steve. Hey, Steve. How's it going?
Good.
Joy. Joy, good to see you. Welcome,
Hi.
welcome. Linda, how's it going? Good to see you. Good. Excellent. Stan, how's everything? Good to see you again. Let's see. Mark, welcome.
Hi.
Good to see you. Jerry, how's life?
I'm wonderful. How are you guys?
Baruch Hashem, all good. Michael, great to see you.
Good to see you.
Awesome. And Ariella, great to see you.
Hi, great to see everybody.
Hey, and last but definitely not least is Stephanie. Great to see you. Welcome, welcome.
Michael, why did you call
I
me?
did tell you.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna mute everybody, and that way we have a nice quiet background. Oh, looks like we have one more participant jumping on. Lisa, welcome from Florida. Welcome, welcome. All right, awesome, great to have you here. Good, this is our fourth and final set of miracles. And the reason why I say bittersweet, of course, is because it's the final session. So on the one hand, it's exciting because hopefully we're gonna have a chance to kind of wrap up our conversation. On the other hand, it's bittersweet in the sense that that we're closing it out. But either way, this is our final session of miracles, our 4-part series exploring the nature of the supernatural. I'm going to give you a very quick recap of what we've done up until now. We've talked about different types of miracles. Primarily, we talked about 2 different types of miracles: the miracles that shatter the laws of nature, the miracles that are so loud and brash, make so much noise that nature doesn't know what to do with itself. It just runs away in terror. Miracles that break nature is category 1. We have another form of miracles. Those are miracles that don't break nature, but rather work with nature. Miracles that are more of a, we'll work with you type thing. You tell us what you need and we can make it happen. So miracles that are a little bit incognito. Within this category, we talked about 2 different levels: the ones that you can kind of recognize that they're hiding inside of nature, and the other ones that are completely so hidden, that even the Baal Hanes, even the one who experienced the miracle, does not recognize that it was a miracle at all. It might seem like normal and natural, and in fact, it was a miracle. But we're not going to get into the difference between the 2nd and 3rd levels today. We already did that before. In general, there are the miracles that break nature and the miracles that work with nature. That's important to remember. Now, the next step. We said, well, which one is greater? What's a greater miracle? At first glance, first blush, we might say that the miracles that are the loudest, the strongest, are the best. Whatever makes the most noise, that's probably the best. Not always the case. We explained that for a few different reasons, the miracles that work within nature are actually the higher form of miracles. Number 1, they come from a higher dimension, a dimension that can tolerate the convergence of the supernatural and the natural. So it's coming from a very deep place, number 1. And number 2, if the whole point of a miracle is to show God's control over nature, then the miracle that bends nature to its will is actually greater than the one that breaks nature. Because the miracle that breaks nature just shows that God can break nature. But which miracle demonstrates God's power to control nature? The one in which nature itself is contorted to fit the dictates of the miracle. So what we said in short, that although the louder miracles seem bigger, more grandiose, sometimes, or looking through a certain lens from a certain perspective, The quieter miracles, the ones that are a little bit more subtle, are actually coming from a deeper place and reflecting a deeper purpose. That recaps the first two sessions together. Last week, we spoke about almost a new topic, almost, but not exactly a new topic, because it's all related, as you'll see today. We spoke about nature itself. Enough about miracles. We spoke about the nature of nature. And we explained last week that nature has a duality. On the one hand, nature implies limitation because every created being has its nature, and its nature, whatever that it is, its nature is different than the nature of the next guy over, the next thing over, right? So a tree, a peach tree has its nature, yeah? And a camel has its nature. And a peach tree is not a camel, and a camel is not a peach tree. So when we talk about nature, there's a very, very strong sense of limitation. Everything is created as it is, and it's not created as something else is. Everything is defined, and definition, by definition, is limitation, right? Definition means you're putting a wall, a boundary around something and telling us and telling it, or telling the world what it is and what it's not, which creates a limitation. It's not an infinite definition, it's a finite definition, which is limitation. So on the one hand, nature, right? We're talking about nature now. Nature is limited. Everything has its limited nature, and it is what it is. It's not something else. On the other hand, we said last week that nature contains an element of the infinite, the borderless, the boundless, that which is not limited, the unlimited. And that is in the fact that nature keeps on spinning. The world keeps on turning. The orbits keep on orbiting. The sun keeps on shining. People keep on coming, right? Everything, this entire machine keeps on moving. And you remember those, I'm sure they're still around, those desk ornaments? You know what I'm talking about? With it's got like the silver balls, and you take one and you drop it and it goes side to side, and yeah, it's like a perpetual motion machine, but it's not, right? It's not, because eventually gravity does its thing and it will stop, it will slow it down and stop it. Everything that's at motion, everything that's part of our limited universe should end. Should end. Not only should end, it should start arcing downward. It should start slowing down. It should become sluggish. So Kabbalah says, this is what Kabbalah says. Kabbalah says that when you look at the world, the fact that nothing has weakened, the fact that nature has not weakened from the beginning of time till now, indicates one truth, that somehow there's a supernatural, infinite force that's spinning this whole thing that we call nature. So yeah, nature itself is limited, but the power that powers nature is an infinite power. So which means that if you look beyond nature, you can almost see in the finite an infinite energy. Give you one simple example. Human beings, mortal or immortal? Unmute yourself to give the very easy answer. Are human beings mortal or immortal?
It depends.
It depends. No, it's the simple answer, the easy answer.
Simple
Yes,
answer.
Individuals or collective?
Mortal. We're mortal beings. Yeah, we're born and we live, and then we reach 120, and that's it. We're mortal beings. However, one second. And this is what we touched on last week. One second. The fact that a human being has the ability to create another human being, who has the ability to create another human being, who has, again, potentially, right, who has the ability to create another human being, means that somewhere in this whole magic sauce of humanity is immortality. By the way, the power of reproduction in Kabbalah is called the koach ha'ein sof within the person. I'll translate. Koach means power. Ha Ein Sof means of the, or the infinite. Ein Sof means without end. The power of procreation, even if we're not utilizing it, right? The ability that human beings have to reproduce, and you could talk about other species as well, but let's talk about human beings because that's what we're talking about, right? That's the example that's given. The power that human beings have to reproduce is an infinite power or ability within a finite species. So within a finite individual, there is something of an infinite power. And that's what we said last week collectively about nature itself. The fact that the same sun is still around, Earth is orbiting and moving around, all the planets and all the everything's still running the way it was, and it's not weakening in any way, at least that we can see it. All of this indicates that although the world is finite, there is an infinite force that is powering the world. You know, I think of, as I said about the Earth orbiting, you know, the Earth both orbits and spins on its axis, right? I was thinking about, you know, people, you know, you could spin the basketball on your finger. Yeah. Okay. Even like the biggest experts at that, Harlem Globetrotters. And ever been to a Harlem Globetrotter game? I took my kids there a few years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I took my kids there, and it's always fun, right? They play against the Washington. Who do they play against? What's the team?
Generals.
The Generals. Yes, thank you. The Generals. Okay, fine. I don't know if it's Washington, but the Generals. Fine. So here's the deal. You know, even if you're very proficient at spinning a basketball on your finger, at some point it's going to stop spinning. The fact that the Earth keeps on spinning and is not stopping indicates a force beyond anything the mind can fathom. The way we discuss it in the Jewish books is it's the power of Ein Sof. So let's summarize this idea, and then we're going to move on to the new stuff today. Bottom line is, within nature itself, we have a confluence. We have a hybrid of finite, because nature is finite. Everything has its nature, and that's a finite nature, mortality, right? So in nature itself is finite, but the specific manner of that nature is finite, but collectively, the force of nature, that itself is a little bit of infinity, of a transcendent power of God. So when we talk about the different powers of God, God has the ability to create finite and the ability to create the infinite. Well, those two are on display within nature itself. Nature reflects God's finite powers, God's ability to limit the light, as well as an infinite power in that same space. But where is the infinite? Within the finite. So this takes us to today's discussion. And today we're going to talk about two things, two major ideas. Number one, the eagle, the eagle, the tzimtzum, and the kav, which we started speaking about last week at the end of the class. We're going to pick up on that conversation. That's number one. And then we're going to bring it back to miracles and understand just how incredible miracles are beyond the miracle of nature. I hope you're understanding where we're going with this. We just explained that nature also has a miraculous piece to it. Nature also has a transcendent, eternal energy to it. Yeah, but miracles are still beyond that. So we're gonna finish off with nature. We're gonna finish nature off. Then we're gonna talk about how amazing miracles really are, and then, as a final touch, we're gonna bring it back to you and I. What does it mean for you and I? How do we live the miracle? How do we be the miracle? And what does that even mean, other than a good bumper sticker? What does that actually mean? Okay, so stick with me. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Let's first rewind and talk about the eagle, the tzimtzum, and the kav. The eagle is not a bird. The eagle means the circle. The tzimtzum is the withdrawal, and the kav is the line. I explained this at the end of last week's class. I'm going to reset it. Before time, it was just God and the Ein Sof, the infinite light. So you have God and the infinite light, and it's taking up all the space. Let me tell you a story that hopefully will help set this image. There was once a father, a dad, who had a big business. And part of the business is he had a big warehouse. He had 3 sons. Each of his sons had qualities that the other one didn't have. He wasn't sure who to give the business over to. You got to put one person in control. You try to give it to all 3, it's going to be chaos. So which son should he give it to? The oldest son, the middle son, or the youngest son? He was debating. He said, you know what? He's going to have a contest. He's going to take one of his warehouses. He had many warehouses. He's going to take one of his warehouses, empty it out, or maybe it was already emptied, whatever, and give each of his sons 1 week to fill up the warehouse to the best of their ability. And after the week, he would come in and assess and judge how full did this son fill the room. And whoever fills the room the best or the most, to the most capacity, will win the contest. So first week is the eldest son. The oldest son has the first crack at it. He's got the first week, and Sunday comes around. Oh boy, this guy is bringing in earth. He's got the caterpillars, the trucks. He's got the yellow trucks, and they're moving in earth, and he's packing the warehouse filled with earth for a whole week. Comes Friday afternoon before Shabbos. We just made the story Jewish. Don't worry, it just happened. Right before Shabbos, they go in, and you can't even look and say, he opens up the door or whatever. He's looking through the windows. Wow, son, very good. Really, really full. Excellent. Good. They clear the whole thing out. Maybe it takes another week to clear all the stuff out. Next, second son. The first son was dabbling in construction, so that's why he had access to the dirt. The second son was an accountant. So he had all these files, the whole week. He's bringing in forklifts of files and papers and documents. He's got the whole thing packed up with paperwork. Comes Erev Shabbos. Oh, very good, my son. Excellent job. The second son did a good job as well. Very full with papers. Excellent. Third, they cleared out. Third son has a shot at it. Sunday morning, the warehouse is his. Nothing. No action. No trucks. No forklifts, no caterpillars, not even the 100 caterpillar, garnish, nothing. Second day, Monday, nothing. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, no movement. They're thinking, he doesn't want it? Maybe he doesn't want it, but then he should bow out of the contest. It comes time for the inspection, but everyone knows that nothing was brought in. They open the door, the warehouse is dark. The youngest son says, wait a minute. Pulls out a candle from his pocket and a match and says to the father, close the door. They close the door, they're inside. It's pitch black. The son strikes the match, lights the candle, maybe it was a torch, probably a torch, and immediately the whole room, the whole warehouse was illuminated, filled with light. The father smiles from ear to ear and he says, the earth, the oldest son, earth, but there's still space. Paper, still space. But light, that light filled the entire room. There was no empty space where the light didn't hit in this warehouse. You, my son, won the contest. So there's many morals to the story. Number 1, work smarter, not harder, right? That's the obvious lesson. Number 2, this is usually how it's used. In life, people pursue possessions, earth. People pursue money, paper. But what's the most filling or fulfilling in life is light, Torah, mitzvot, all wonderful ideas. But I want to use it tonight as an example of what everything looked like at the beginning. It was just God and his light, and it filled all of potential space. There was no edge. There was no limit to that manifestation of light. It was everywhere. Before everywhere was everywhere, it was everywhere. And then God decides to create. Like I said last week, we call that tzimtzum, or God's decision to create is a decision to create. Aliyas haratzon, it arose in God's will. And at that point, God performs the tzimtzum, which is basically a contraction. God says, okay, I'm taking up all the space. Let me condense. Let me shrink a little bit. Let me give space for other. I said last week, if you're in a conversation and you're doing all the talking, there's no other. Stop, listen, let the other. I should probably practice what I preach. Okay, but yeah, so what happens? God condenses, contracts, tzimtzum contraction, and now there's space. Empty space. Empty space that is empty. So there's nothing, but there's also not the presence of the infinite divine energy or light either. So it's kind of potential, it's potential other, but in practice, like practically, there's nothing that's energizing it because it's just the potential. It's just the space, but it hasn't been filled. Okay, this is where the kav comes in. So what's the kav? The kav is a line that's drawn from, on the one side, it goes all the way back, it attaches back to the infinite light. It breaks through the tzimtzum, through that gap, and emerges into the empty space. And that is the line, the finite line of divine light that powers our universe, created beings. All created beings are powered by the kav, which is a limited line of light. It's not the infinite light, it's a limited line of light. It's a kav, it's one line, it's not the whole shebang, it's one line with dimensions to it, right? So to speak, dimensions, it's limited. That's what powers us. So there's the empty space, and then there's the line. In the language of Kabbalah, I mean, that is definitely Kabbalistic language, but in other Kabbalistic terms, we call this Ar and Keli, or Ar and Kelim. Let me translate. Light, Ar is light, Kelim are vessels. So you have light and vessel, and there's always an interplay between light and vessel. So vessel is the container. The vessel is the space, the empty space. But empty space is just empty space. It's nothing without something. The light is what fills the empty space to make it a thing. So you need both light and vessel. If you just had light but no vessel, then it's not anything tangible. If you just have vessel without light, then it's also just potential. So you need light and vessel. Simple example is body and soul. If you just have a soul without a body, it's not life. At least the life the way we know it. It's just the soul, just spiritual without a vessel. It's just the light without a vessel. You don't have. If you just have vessel though, without light, that's a body. That's also not alive. Light and vessel is the magic sauce. Let me give you another example. Language. I love this example. Language is weird. I'll tell you why. I'm going to give you I'll give you 3 letters. I want you to spell it in your head and tell me what it means. C-A-T. What does it mean? Oh, you need to unmute yourselves. Okay, so go ahead. C-A-T.
Cat.
Cat, furry animal.
Good, excellent. Good, beautiful. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cat. That's the meaning of the word cat. What's interesting is when it comes to language, you have this interplay between light and vessel, right? The language itself is just the container. Then there's the meaning of the language that grants the container meaning. I'll give you a proof. Oh, and it only works if you have access to both vessel and light. Otherwise, it's nonsensical. Give you a simple example. Let's just say you don't know Chinese. Let's say, right? You may know it, you may not know. Let's say you don't know it. And you go to China and they're talking Chinese and you hear the words. Do they mean anything? Nope. But you're hearing the words. You're just getting the vessel. You don't know the light. The vessel is meaningless without the light. Are you with me? The words are a container for the meaning if you know the meaning. But if you don't know the meaning, then all you're holding is an empty cup and you're like, I don't even know what this is. I mean, you would if it was an empty cup. But if you just hear sounds, they don't mean anything. On the other hand, go express something without language. Over the phone. Not body language. No cheating. Over the phone. No language. Go. It's going to be an awkward conversation. Honestly. You're going to think it's a prank call if you're on the other side. Because you have to use the container, which means you have all the intention, all the meaning is there, but without the container, the light's there. The light is the meaning in this context, right? Yeah. You can have all the light there, but if there's no container, it's not going to be transmitted. On the other hand, if you just have the container, but you don't have the meaning, it's also not working. So when it comes to language, the way it works, I or whatever, right? That means that the container, the CAT container contains the meaning for you, Emmy, of a cat. And so that's the light that goes in the container. Does what I'm saying make sense? Yes? Everything in this world works with this interplay of light and vessel. That's the way things work. Life itself, soul and body, language, meaning in container, in words and language and letters. Everything works light and vessel. If you've ever had a drink, you've had light and vessel. Right? You're literally drinking something in a container, right? Go pour without a. Okay, you have to contain it somehow. Right? Go to Vegas, play the slot machine. You're going to need a vessel to haul away all your winnings. Halavai, it should all be like that. Now, getting back to the point. So life is vessel and light, and that's what happens. You see, before all this, it was just the infinite light. No vessels, no other, no nothing, just God and God's full expression, and that's it. No room for anything else. God does its tzimtzum, God contracts, and now there's space. Now you have space, which is the source of the vessels. But just vessels don't mean anything. It's Chinese to me. There's no content. All I'm hearing is vessel, vessel, vessel. I don't know what it means. That's where the kav comes in. I'm giving you obviously imperfect analogies, but different ways of getting this idea to the point where it makes sense. So you have the empty space. That's the potential for other, but the potential is one thing, but you need something to give it life or meaning. That's where the kav, the line, comes in from the original light. You have now a thin tube, if you will, a thin point of light that pokes through. It fills the vessels, it fills the space, and now that's the origins of the universe. Mazel tov, good, we exist. Fine. So the way we're going to describe this today is that the light of the kav is usually understood to be, well, it's literally defined and limited, as opposed to the big light that was shining everywhere before, where there could not be anything else. The thin kav that comes in after the tzimtzum into that empty space, it's defined, it's narrow, and that's the source of nature. But guess what? This is the magic sauce. Guess what? The fact that kav is pulling from the original light means that even as it's a limited form of light, creating the natural, defined, limited universe, not infinite, finite universe, it still grants it some infinite qualities as well, because it's stemming from the original light, the limited light of the kav that's going into that empty space. Because it's originating in the infinite light, it therefore retains some of its properties. And even as it's limited, it's a little bit unlimited as well. It's that finite, infinite hybrid that we know and love as nature. That's why nature, although it's limited, it has infinite qualities, like the fact that we're still going and we can keep on creating and reproducing, etc. Those are kind of where the infinite leaks through. Why does it leak through? Where's the infinite coming from? It's got a tube back to the original. There's an open, there's a leak from the original infinite light, and it's coming through the kav. Does what I'm saying make sense? Yes? Again, I'm concretizing these ideas, but it's essentially what's going on. Okay, now without further ado, I am going to share my screen. How can a finite kav hold infinite light? Excellent question. Excellent question. How can an infinite light flow through a narrow tube? Imagine a straw. I know straws are not kosher anymore, but who said I was talking about a plastic straw? That was that was you. I'm talking about the biodegradable paper straws, right? So yeah, you can have the whole, water dumped in your head, or you can pull it through a limited, a narrow straw that only gives you so much. So the question is, Mark is asking, so how can the infinite light leak through a finite space? It's a good question. The answer is because it's not quantity, it's quality. Yeah. So even if it's a narrow space, so it's maybe narrowed a bit, but the quality of the light still has traces from the original quality. And if it's infinite quality, even if you confine it to a narrow space, it still retains some of its properties. So that is the short of it. Adina Malka is asking, is kav like an umbilical cord? Maybe. Yeah, you could say that. Speaking of umbilical cords, I should mention that today is Nassen's birthday. Random reference. my oldest Nassen Nassen turned 16 today.
Oh my goodness! Happy birthday!
I know. Trust me, I'm more shocked than any of you all put together. Trust me on that one.
Is he going to get his driver's license without having to do the driver's test while he's got this little window?
You know what? I need to look into that, or he needs to look into that. I'm not familiar with that. I'm not sure, but I'll look into that. That sounds interesting, to say the least. I don't know. Interesting.
It's expensive.
I don't know if it's good or not good. Interesting, but it sounds interesting. I'll look into that, and I'm sure he will too. Okay, but I want to clarify. So even if it's a narrow straw, what are you getting? What juice are you getting? You're getting infinite juice through that narrow straw. So again, as a whole, the universe is obviously limited. God is infinite. The world is finite. But there are traces of infinite within the finite. That's one point. Second point that I want to answer from the comments is, Linda's asking, I said in the beginning there was God and God's infinite light. Does that mean there are two entities? So no. What we mean by, the reason why I said it that way is because that's the way it's phrased in some places in Kabbalah. It says, in the beginning, there was just hu, ushmo, him and his name, or him and his infinite light. But it doesn't mean two entities. It means one entity, right? So in general, it's like, is the sun, this is obviously lahavdil, or to create a lot of separation between God, not calling God a sun, S-U-N. But if we look at the sun, so is the sun and the sunlight, are they two separate things? Or the sun that is luminescence automatically radiates light. So it's, I don't know if it's two things, but it's really one and the same. It's almost like, if I were going to use another crude example, but an example that I love. I wish I had a better container here, better vessel. Yeah, okay, this is a can, but imagine if it was like a cup. I don't even need to hold the can for you to imagine a cup. You just imagine a cup. But imagine a cup that has, an inside. Anybody have a cup? Anybody want to hold up a cup for me? You don't have to get a cup. If you have a cup, look at that. Look at that. You guys come with props. Everyone's got a cup. Literally, everyone's got a cup. Fantastic. Okay, at least the ones that I can see. Now, here's the deal. So you have a cup, right? And the part of the cup that you use is the inside of the cup. That's what holds the liquid. So here's my question. So then you can get rid of the outside of the cup. Imagine you go to a store, you go to Anthropology, and you say, or whatever, Crate and Barrel, or Target, and you say, look, I want a cup, but just the inside. Don't show me an outside of a cup. And then they like, what are you saying? Here, how about this one? Guys, hold up your cup again. Whoever has, hold it up. No. I don't know. I'm seeing the outside. I don't want the outside. Only give me the inside. So the response would be, nope. You can't, what's called outside. The moment you have an inside, you have the other, like if I have I don't know how to do this, right? If I have the inside, there's obviously an outside. There's no other way to have it. That's the way this works. That's the way this works. There's always an inside and an outside. So you're always going to have, a duality. You're going to have, or you're going to have some things come with other things. That's just the nature of things. So God comes with light. Not that God and God's light are necessarily two separate things, but the sun is bright. So God has an expression. That's what we call light. It's not physical light. It's divine light, whatever that means, whatever that looks like. Okay, Mark is asking if a pipe were put next to a hydrogen bomb to carry its power, the pipe would be vaporized. Yes. So how is the kav not vaporized? The answer is because God, who is infinite, can pull off magic tricks and make sure, literally that's the answer. Because we're not talking about the laws of nature, we're talking about the laws of God. And the laws of God are not limited to what makes sense. Therefore, I know it sounds like a cop-out, but it's literally what we're talking about here. That you can have a convergence of the infinite in a finite space and it coexist. What's the mechanism? Kav. How does it make sense? It's never going to make sense, but that's the mechanism. Okay, now with all of this in mind, let us jump straight into... Oh my, every week I remember that I forgot. Okay, one day I'll send it to you. Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen with you. Miracle study text. Boom, here we go. All right, guys, we have a lot of guys and gals. We have a lot of ground to cover. So we're going to jump in and we're going to jump in hard. Okay, here we go. We are up to, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for the benefit of everybody to follow along easily. I'm going to make this 120, 120%. Okay, let's jump right in. I'm going to start right here. This can be explained. This can be explained. In other words, why is it that nature has the infinite? How is that possible? How do you have this duality? This can be explained based on what is written in the series of discourses from the year 5666, 1904. There it is explained that the reason why the natural order has a consistent and unwavering quality to it, despite the fact that nature stems from the divine life force that is garbed in created beings, and the life force garbed in created beings is a limited life force as explained above. So how do you have consistency, infinite consistency in a limited space? It's because the life force that is garbed in created beings stems not from the vessels, but rather from the line, from the kav. In other words, life does not emerge from the empty space. It emerges from the line, from the kav. And the light of the kav is rooted in God's infinite light that precedes the tzimtzum contraction. That line goes all the way back to that original infinite light. And even though it's now narrow, it pulls off that magic combo and it pulls in the infinite inside that finite space. And that's why nature, which is finite, has an infinite quality of consistency. Let's continue. It is explained in many Kabbalistic sources that the vessels, the empty space, the container, the space, originates from the tzimtzum itself, from the contraction. Whereas the kav, the light that shines into those vessels, the kav originates from the infinite light that precedes the tzimtzum. It is just that the kav emerges by way of the tzimtzum. In other words, the kav emerges after and through the tzimtzum, but it's not a product of the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum creates the space. The kav is the light that's produced from the original infinite light. Again, all stuff that we just explained. It is thus written in Eitz Chaim. Eitz Chaim is book of Kabbalah written by Rabbi Chaim Vital, the primary student of the great Rabbi Yitzchak or Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Arizal. It is thus written in Eitz Chaim. Eitz Chaim means tree of life. It is thus written in Eitz Chaim, quote, following the tzimtzum, one straight line, kav, issued forth from the infinite light that precedes the tzimtzum from its circular light. So why is it called circular light? Because circles have no beginning and end. It represents infinity. So from the circle infinity shines one ray of light, one straight line kav, into the empty space that's produced by the tzimtzum. There you go. That's what we're talking about. Now, it is well known that the kav's ability, this is very important now. Okay, let's jump back in. Now, it is well known that the kav's ability to break through the darkness of the tzimtzum, which indicates power and strength. Remember, the kav, this point I haven't made before. This is now the point. Let me explain this. Think about it. You had the infinite light, then it was contracted, and in the rest of the space is now empty space. And now you have a light, a point, a ray of light, one line of light that shines from the original light into the darkness. That means it has to break the membrane of the tzimtzum. Remember that tzimtzum created the withdrawal and created almost a boundary or a border. How does the kav pierce the tzimtzum? How does the kav pierce to the other side, from inside the infinite light, the circle? How does it pierce outside of that space into the empty space? I'm glad you asked. Now, it is well known that the kav's ability to break through the darkness of the tzimtzum, which indicates or which requires power and strength, is due to its source being, we're going to now introduce a new idea. The source of the kav specifically is from the hidden dimension of Tiferet. Okay. There are 10 spheros, 10 divine energies. One of them is Tiferet, which is translated as harmony or balance, compassion in human context. But there's something called Tiferet HaNe'elam, which I translated as the hidden dimension of Tiferet. We don't have time to break it down exactly what this is, but just know this. It's a very, very deep level. Let's continue back inside. This hidden dimension of Tiferet transcends even the light that was shining openly prior to the tzimtzum. In other words, what he's saying here is the light that was shining before the tzimtzum, before the contraction, pales in comparison to this level of Tiferet HaNe'elam. And that's from where the kav emanates, not even from the light, from higher than the light. I know I said before that God and his light are essentially one, but now we're breaking it down and saying the light is, when you have the sun and the sunlight, you have the sun itself, and then you have, kind of as it emerges. I mean, look at a candle, right? Shabbat candle. You light the candle, you look at the wick, yeah? Look at the wick. It's got different colors, different hues of fire. There's like dark blue, medium blue, orange, yellow, and then it gets a white glow around it. There's different properties. Again, this is a very tangible example, a candle. But the point here is that there's the general light prior to the tzimtzum, but then there's this level called Tiferet HaNe'elam. And that's where the kav is drawing from. It's even higher than the light. And that's why it can break through the tzimtzum. And when it breaks through the tzimtzum, that's where it gets the strength to bust through the tzimtzum. And when it busts through that tzimtzum to the other side, it brings incredible power and infinite power, which is even in finite creation, there's an infinite dimension of nature as well. Okay, let's continue. Based on all of this, yeah, right here. Based on all of this, we can explain why there is an advantage to the revelation of God's infinite power through the consistency of the natural order over the revelation of the infinite through miracles. He's saying that paragraph was basically him saying, get ready for this idea. On one level, you can say that nature is greater than a miracle. The natural order is greater than a miracle. Why and how? Here we go. The light that precedes the tzimtzum is limited to the notion of infinity. right? The light that precedes the tzimtzum is limited to infinity, which is why it needed a tzimtzum, because otherwise it was stuck in infinity. You couldn't have finite creation in that infinite light because it was infinite, and infinite and finite were opposites. So the light that precedes the tzimtzum is limited to the notion of infinity. This light cannot openly shine within the limitation of the world. Therefore, the revelation of the encompassing light, i.e. the revelation of the light that precedes the tzimtzum, the source of miracles. Oh, wait. Hold on, before the therefore. Okay, before that. What he's saying is that the light that precedes, the Ein Sof light, the infinite light that precedes the tzimtzum is limited to infinite. I know it sounds paradoxical, limited to infinite. Infinite's not limited, but it's stuck in the infinite space, which is why it needed to be withdrawn in order to create the world. The world didn't just emerge inside that infinite light because the infinite light was a contradiction to the world, a finite world. So that light had to be withdrawn to get enough space for finite reality. Let's continue back with regards to miracles. Therefore, the revelation of the encompassing light, i.e. the revelation of the light that precedes the tzimtzum, which is the source of miracles. Miracles come from that light, from that infinite light that was around, that was then contracted. That's where miracles come from. So that revelation, when it is manifest in this world, it manifests through the shattering of nature, the obliteration of the natural, of the nature limitation of the world. This is similar to what Mark was saying before. What happens when, but again, the kav we said is an exception because it's drawing from Tiferet HaNelam. And on that level, even magic is possible. But if you have that infinite light and that contacts a finite world, guess what happens? The finite world is obliterated, right? Because the infinite is infinite and the finite is the finite. And it's like the hydrogen in the pipe, it's going to explode. He says that's what a miracle is. A miracle that breaks nature, right? What's happening? You have a touching of the infinite light and a finite natural world. And when that light hits that space in the world, the natural world breaks. And all that you see is the miracle, that light. That's what a miracle is.
Rabbi,
Yes.
what is the light in the Garden of Eden?
That's not infinite light. Adam and Eve were created inside already after the tzimtzum. That's all still part of might be more spiritual, but it's all post-tzimtzum. It's all post-contraction. It's not infinite light. It's not infinite light.
Thank you.
Sure. Now, so what is a miracle? And he's talking about obviously the miracles that break nature. What is a miracle at its core? A miracle is when that original light that couldn't allow for the space of the world, which is why it had to be contracted, when that light leaks through into this world, once again, it doesn't leave room for the world, and it obliterates the laws of nature, which is why a miracle breaks the laws of nature, because it's that original light that was so big, the world couldn't exist. When it touches anything, it's like a magic eraser. Not the one that, the magic eraser or whatever, they sell a product that cleans things. But it's like a magic eraser in which erases all the fabric of the natural universe. Because that was the original light. The whole point is that was the light that was too big for the world to exist. It was pulled back. Now the world can exist. Well, what happens if it leaks out? Not the kav. The kav we said is an exception because it's from Tiferet HaNelam. What happens when a little bit of that light leaks out and touches a part of the world? Zap. Zap. It breaks the world. It breaks that spot of the world. That's what a miracle is. Fine, that's what a miracle is. What about nature? The light of the kav, by contrast, from which issues forth the consistency of the natural order, is very different. Again, the kav is different. It's not just the infinite light leaking through. The light of the kav, we said, is coming from even higher. Being that, this is what he says right here, being that the source of the kav is from the incredibly lofty hidden dimension of Tiferet, which we just mentioned before, it can therefore include and combine the two opposite and impossible qualities of infinite and finite. Therefore, the revelation of the unlimited, eternal dimension of the kav manifests within limitation nature. What he's saying here is very simple. He says, when it comes to the natural universe coming in contact with energy from the infinite, original infinite light that breaks the world, it shatters the world, and that's what we call a miracle. That's miracle 101. Infinite light touching the world, poof, the world goes bye-bye. In that, some laws are being bent in that moment, being broken. That's what we call a miracle. What's nature? Nature is also a miracle, but a different kind. Nature is coming from Tiferet HaNe'elam, even higher than a miracle, he says, in essence, even higher than the infinite light where miracles come from. It's so high, right? Like we said about the other form of miracles, that you don't even see the miraculous nature. You don't even see the infinite nature. Only if you look kind of hard, you're like, wait a second, things are still going on? No slowdown? Consistency? I'm seeing some infinite power here. People can make people who can make people who can make people. Wait a second. That's not so finite. I'm sensing some traces of infinite. God says, you got me. It's coming from Tiferet HaNe'elam, which is an infinite power that even goes down into that finite space and coexists. Okay, now, with all of this being said, what we've just done is we've shifted the landscape between miracles and nature. We've said that nature is primarily the kav. Again, I want to use the language of Kabbalah because it's, I spoke about language, vessels, and light. I hope you're getting the light, but I want to use these vessels. I want to use this language. So what is nature? Nature is a product of the kav. Post Tzimtzum, one line of light, finite line of light, producing nature. Mazel tov, that is nature. Nature is born of the kav. Yet, within nature, there's an infinite kind of flavor to it. You know, if you look kind of close, you'll see, wait a second, it's consistent, it's constant, it's everlasting, it's not slowing down. Oh, so it's the kav, it is the kav. The kav is limited, but its source is Tiferet HaNe'elam, so it has some tricks up its sleeve, but it's nature. It's literally called nature because it's nature, which is limited, boxed in. This has this nature, that has that nature, right? Limitation. But within the limitation, what is a miracle? A miracle is not the kav. A miracle is when the infinite light that was pulled back pops out. I'm thinking of like a sun flare. I don't even know what a sun flare is, but I can imagine like a blop coming out from that, it was withdrawn, oops, it leaked, but obviously not unintentional. It's very intentional. It leaks out, touches the world, and zaps it, which raises a question. That explains miracles that break nature. What about the miracles, the second type of miracles that work with nature? Is that the same as nature? No, we call it a miracle in nature. I hope you're understanding my question. We talked before about two types of miracles. One miracle that breaks nature, well, that one that's infinite light that can't tolerate nature, so it breaks nature. But what about the miracles that are subtle, that work inside nature? They're still miracles. It's not nature, it's not from the kav, it's from the Ar Ein Sof, it's from the infinite light. So then how is it working within nature? So here in chapter 5, which we're not going to read inside, I'm going to tell it to you outside. And it's going to be such a beautiful ending to this. Here he gets to the real big idea. And that is, when you have the infinite light, it can operate in two ways. Number one second. What's the point of the infinite light? The infinite light shows its dominion over nature. Nature is nature, but has a bit of infinite juice in it. But that's still nature. What's the whole point of a miracle? It's a revelation of the infinite light that doesn't play nature, doesn't deal with nature. It's infinite light. It's the part that had to go bye-bye for nature to exist or to emerge. This is the infinite stuff. So it breaks nature. How does it not break? What about the miracles that don't break nature? What are they and how do they work? So he says like this, there's two types of miracles. There's one miracle that shows its power over nature in the fact that it breaks nature altogether. It touches nature, it breaks the laws of nature, and then you see nature broken, you're like, oh yeah, that was the Ar Ein Sof, that was the infinite light. And then there's another energy from the Ar Ein Sof that is so powerful and so lofty that it even can wield its power by breaking nature while nature still stands. Again, it's still considered to be breaking nature, but there's two types of breaking nature. Nature is not broke. When we talk about nature, the calf, that's nature. It's not being broken. It is literally, it's nature. A miracle, both forms of miracles now. Chapter 5, he says, both miracles, forms of miracles, are breaking nature, but there's two types of breaking nature. There's breaking nature, and nature is broken. And then there's breaking nature while nature is still holding on. And he gives a beautiful human example. And this is where it becomes very personal and where we become the miracle in this conversation. Human beings are naturally filled with ego. We're just naturally self-aware, self-oriented, maybe self-centered, maybe selfish sometimes, creatures. That's it. That's our nature. Kabbalah speaks of two states of when that is broken. There's called bittul b'metzias and bittul hayesh. One is existential nullification, where, again, this is like kind of theoretical, right? Where a person is so aware of source that they cease to feel themselves as existing, so nullified, so absent that all they sense is God. That's called bittul b'metzias, their entire existence existentially nullified. That's one. That's very high. And then you have another form, which is called bittul hayesh, which means you're still who you are. You still have your ego. But even with your ego, you say, you know what? I'm going to listen to God. Yeah, I don't want to. I'm still going to do it anyway, which is higher, which is greater. A person who totally dissolves within the reality of God and doesn't even feel themselves, only feels God, and therefore does what God wants, or someone who feels their own ego and opposition and has to break themselves and say, you know what, I'm still going to do what God wants, even though I really don't want to, which is greater. So some might say that the first paradigm is greater because it's totally transparent to God. But in truth, the second is higher. Why? Because in the first instance, when a person dissolves into the infinite, into the divine will, again, theoretically, if that state could be achieved, when a person dissolves into that state, yeah, their entire desire is to do what God wants, which means it's connected with their own ego. Their ego is now God's ego is their ego, but it's still what they want. Whereas when it comes to the second type of person, the person who still maintains what they want to do different than what God wants to do, but has to break themselves to do what God wants to do. In that case, what you have there is a bending of the will. The first case, there's no bending of the will. They've lost their own desire, their own self-oriented desire. There's only divine desire all the way through. So there's no challenge, there's no struggle. In the second case, you have conflicting desires, the human desire and God's desire, and the person intentionally bends toward what God wants. Doesn't break, but bends. These are the two miracles. One miracle is very big, that it breaks nature. But the second is even bigger. It tolerates nature as it is, and nature as it is forced or is bent to do what God wants. That's an even the miracle, what the Ein Sof, the infinite light, wants. And in a sense, that is the greatest form of a miracle. The Talmud asks the question, what's greater? That a person shouldn't want to eat the thing that's not kosher? Or that the person does want to eat it, but they don't do it anyway? Again, I'll ask you a question. What's more righteous? To not even desire the thing that's not kosher, or to really, really want it and to hold yourself back from not eating it? You know what the answer is? It depends. If you're talking about what is more spiritual, yeah, the first type of person who doesn't even want it maybe is more spiritual. But what represents a greater strength? The second person. The person who feels their own temptation and is still able to defy it even while they still feel their temptation. That's a greater strength. And that's why the second type of miracle, where nature is fighting against the miracle, nature is in full force, and the miracle is trying to bend it its way, and the nature yields to the miracle, to the Ein Sof desire, the way things should run, and it bends, doesn't break. It bends. That's an even greater expression than the first type of miracle. In the final analysis, we are meant to be the miracle, which means we're not meant to be necessarily the greatest tzaddik in the world who only desires to do what God wants and never has any self-oriented temptation. Honestly, that's a very lofty level, and good luck to attain that. If you're banking on reaching that level of total symbiosis, synchronicity with the divine, where your every desire is perfectly in sync with God's and you never desire anything else, if you're waiting for that, don't hold your breath. We are embodiments of the second type of miracle, not the one in which the entire nature of the world is broken and all you see is God. No, the one in which nature is still putting up a fight. Nature still maintains, nope, I'm nature. The person says, nope, this is what I want to do. But ultimately, who has its way? God's will has its way. That's referring to the type of person who says, I know what I want. I know what God wants, and I really don't want to do it. But you know what? I'm going to do it. But I might be kicking and screaming. I don't want to help out the other guy. I want to stay at home. I don't want to, volunteer or give to the, I don't want to do it. But I'm doing it anyway. In the final analysis, that's the greatest miracle. The greatest miracle is the one in which we retain our nature, our contrary nature, and that nature bends toward God's will. So, as we conclude, yes, Mark just texted me, that puts the Beinoni above the Tzaddik, perfectly stated. For those familiar with the language of Tanya, Mark just hit it on the nail. That there's a tzaddik who's perfect through and through, aligned with God's will. Perfection, a snapshot of divine will. Mazel tov. The Beinoni is someone who kicks and screams, I don't want to. I want to do this, I don't want to do that. But at the end of the day, does the right thing. Who's higher? The tzaddik for sure. Nope. Not according to Kabbalah, not according to Chabad philosophy. You know who's the greatest level? The one who is fighting the good fight. The one who actively bends the needle or whatever it is. Whatever the language is. The one who's actively pushing. The one who's already been broken. When I say broken, the one who's already there. Yeah, you only have one force. There's no contrary force. When you have the contrary force and still the right thing is happening, that's even greater. The life of a Beinoni, which is you and I, right? That's, unless you're a tzaddik, in which case, God bless you. But most of us are striving to be a Beinoni, where we don't feel like doing the right thing, but we do it anyway, or we feel like doing the wrong thing, but we hold ourselves back. That's a Beinoni life, and that, in the final analysis, is the greatest miracle. So, in conclusion, we spoke about many things about miracles. And we traced miracles in their source and their origin. We explained how miracles come from the infinite light that precedes the world, which is why the infinite light does such a number on finite reality. It breaks it because it's so lofty. And then we say, well, what about the other miracles that don't break nature? How do they work? Isn't it infinite light? And we said, yeah, it is infinite light. But that infinite light is operating in a different way. It's keeping nature on its terms, and even as nature is in full strength of nature, it's still leaning toward the way that God wants. The story of Hanukkah, the story of Purim, these are stories in which nature was still alive and kicking. No nature was broken. And even within nature, it bent toward the supernatural. That's pretty incredible. It broke toward the miracle. Not broke, it bent, leaned toward the miracle. So, again, I want to make sure, I want to hammer home this point, because this is the personal takeaway. It's great to know about miracles and the mechanisms and kind of create a chart. Okay, this miracle comes from here. That miracle comes from there. Nature itself comes from Kav Tiferet Elam. It's good to have the map, and there's a lot of value in that. And I hope you learned a lot. And as much as we've learned together, there is incredible amount of additional Kabbalistic wisdom to learn about these topics. There's a lot to learn. We covered a lot and a lot of deep stuff. And I'm happy that we had a chance to learn learn the language and the terminology and the ideas and the concepts and get that. But here's the takeaway. The takeaway is you and I, we're the miracle. You and I are the greatest miracle. A human being living a human life, not a superhuman life. A human being living a normal human life with the day-to-day struggles of earning a living, eating and drinking and other temptations. Everyday, normal human being, everyday life, for you and I to make the choice to battle against our own egos, not to break, but to fight, to push against our egos and do the right thing, that unleashes and that taps into the greatest light. It's the greatest miracle of all. Not the one in which we're broken, but the one in which we're very strong, very, our own self-will is very strong. We still do the right thing. So be the miracle, be the mensch that you can be. And notwithstanding our own inner temptations, let's do something that seems impossible, which is submit to, like Hebrew National once said, we answer to a higher authority, to transcend our own ego and do the right thing, even while we feel it. That's the greatest accomplishment. All right, that takes us to the end of this series. The final message is be the miracle. The miracle is inside. Forget about the outside stuff. I mean, don't forget, but the miracle is inside. Choose to be the miracle, the greatest miracle of all. Not a tzaddik, but a Beinoni. Normal human being doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. I once heard this definition of a hero. A hero is not someone who is not afraid. A hero is someone who's very afraid and still saddles up and gets it done. That's what a Beinoni is. That's what a hero is. That's what a miracle is. That's what a miracle is. That's the greatest miracle of all. All right, good. Feel free to unmute yourself to ask any questions, and we'll do a final sign off. All right, jump in.
Ari,
yes.
I want to know, since this is the final class, nature abhors a vacuum. So what's the next class going to be?
Good question. Good question. I wanted to do something. There's two things that I really want to do. I'm ready to go on these two things. It's just about structuring them, scheduling them, not structuring them. Structure's there. One is on the resurrection. What does that mean? Right? We talk about Mashiach, resurrection of the dead. Bodies will come back to souls back in bodies. What's going on? Right? It's one of the 13 principles of faith. Principle number 12 is, I believe in the coming of Mashiach. Right? Better world. Principle 13 is the idea that the souls will come back into bodies. Number one, what does that actually mean? Why is that a thing? Why is that a good thing? Why is that, on every level, what does it mean? But also, most importantly, what does it tell us about the nature of the body? You see, we typically look at the soul as being holy and the body as being a bit of a drag. Why is it that in the ultimate time, right, the Messianic era, why are bodies coming back? We should be like so over the body. It's like, oh, finally, spiritual times. Let's bask in the ray of spirituality. Why the body? So that's one topic. I think it's a very, very deep topic, and it's a beautiful topic. The power of the body, right? The value of the body. That's ultimately the point of it. What is the value of the body, which is why the bodies will come back. So what's the value of the body? So that's one topic. The other topic is the nature of time, right? The nature of time. How does time work? What is time? When did time begin? If we could say that. What are the lessons of time? So it's just about finding the right structure and time to do it, the right body and time. That was a joke. Ariella, bye. It's great to see you. Thank you for coming. I know you have to run. Bye, Ariella.
Very
So those are the two topics that I'd like to explore in our next series. So we'll see. There's so many things and not enough time. There's also a Yiddish course that we're launching soon in a few weeks. So that's going to probably be based on our Yiddish teacher. It's probably going to be Monday nights. But after our Tuesday night class concludes in a few weeks, we have a Tuesday night Judaism at Home class. We may throw one of these topics in on the Tuesday night. So again, it's just about juggling, or not juggling, just about, positioning things in and getting the, getting everything scheduled. But it's all going to happen, please God. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Lots of good stuff. All right. Who else? Mark, what you got?
I just wanted to thank you. It's a fantastic course.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you all appreciate the brilliance of Kabbalah, taking these concepts, right? Taking these amazing concepts of miracles and nature and breaking them down. Where the supernatural in nature is different than miracles. That nature that has supernatural elements is different than miracles that operate within nature. That's what we said. That was I hope that was the final punchline, right? I mean, before we personalized it, right? The final punchline was nature has an infinite, spin to it, which is one thing, the kav, but miracles are something else. So nature can have supernatural, and supernatural can have natural, but they're still two different planes. There's a brilliance in Kabbalah that I hope came through. I'm just saying this in response to Mark. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I hope the brilliance came through. And then I hope at the end, the bottom line is, be the miracle. Don't be the tzaddik. It's too lofty to strive. We're gonna get depressed when we don't get there. Recognize that life will always be a challenge. I will always be kicking and screaming on some level. I will be fighting it and tempted every which direction other than maybe where I need to go. Doesn't matter. Still do the right thing. That's the greatest miracle. That's it. Okay. Somebody just asked me a question in the chat. Let's see. Alex, what is the text you were using? Excellent question. The text I was using was a translation that I did, but the original is, I have it right here. Ba-ba-bam. It's called Sefer Maimar Malukit. It's a compilation of Hasidic discourses. And I believe I mentioned in the first session, I hope I did, that this is taken from a discourse that was taught on the last day of Passover in the year 1952. After on Shal Pesach, Tafshin Yud Beis, 1952. One of the early discourses of the Rebbe. The Rebbe became Rebbe in Tafshin, his father-in-law passed away in 1950. He officially became Rebbe in 1951. This was Passover 1952. So very early in the Rebbe's tenure. He took this discourse. Now it's based on, obviously, I mean, you read it. It's based on all of these Kabbalistic sources, but the Rebbe weaves it together in such a brilliant way, making sense of these big lofty concepts and breaking it down in a step-by-step orderly fashion. It's never been translated before. This discourse, never been translated before. I've done the first translation. I didn't translate the whole thing. We got till, let me see. Just so you know, even in this discourse, there are 12 chapters.
Wow.
We got through chapter 4 inside, and I told you outside at the end, chapters 5 and 6. We did about half the discourse.
Unbelievable.
It's incredible. I mean, it's mind-boggling. These are things that you have to study and spend to study it again and again and again and again, like multiple times, to even understand what's being said.
Rabbi, was the discourse given, and then subsequently it was written down and it was given orally?
Yes. The Rebbe said it. So very good question. Different Rebbes delivered their Hasidic teachings in different ways. So some of the Rebbe's, some of the Chabad Rebbe's would write down their discourses. They would pen the discourses and then maybe teach it also, but mainly through writing. But our Rebbe primarily communicated by teaching, by talking, and then later was transcribed later, and then published. I will tell you, I need to explain this. The Rebbe spoke mainly on Shabbat and holidays when you cannot record.
Yes.
Right? There were no recordings, which means all of these discourses and talks. There's a difference between talks and discourses. The Rebbe would give talks and then discourses. Discourses are the deep, heavy stuff like we studied right now. That's just one example of hundreds and thousands of discourses that the Rebbe taught. Then there were talks that were more free-flowing and more about what's going on. And, I'm not minimizing it, but like explaining Rashi's and whatever, but not like heavy Hasidus and Kabbalah. That's a discourse. That's called a mimer. And then you have a sicha, which is more of an informal discourse. Everyone was in the same room, in the same setting, and both happened. So it's not more formal or less formal in a setting, but it's more of like the concepts being presented. Are they like, the Rebbe would say a sicha, and he would be animating, getting into it. And then the Rebbe would signal something. Not every Farbrengen, but he would signal. And when he signaled, there was a certain tune that was sung. The Rebbe got very, and the Rebbe's face would get very serious, would turn like a very pale. And the Rebbe said the mimer, said the Chassidic discourse in a very specific tune. He would hold a handkerchief under the table while he said it. And it was, listen, Chassidim call the saying of a discourse, we call it dach, daled aleph ches, divrei elokim chayim, which means divine communication. It's like, these are like the heavy stuff. I'm not minimizing the other stuff, which is brilliant insights in Torah and modern life application and all that stuff, and all that, all brilliant Torah. But a mimer is like next level stuff. Tonight and over the previous 3 sessions, we studied one half of one mimer in 1952 that the Rebbe said on the last day of Pesach. This is one of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of such discourses that are just absolutely mind-blowing, that have never been translated into English, that are only available to those that have the language skills, although it's not a hard Hebrew, it's a traditional Hebrew, it's not a complex language. Within Hebrew, it's relatively straightforward, but also have the ability to understand and decipher. And so it's not an easy subject to cover. And I feel very, very happy to have had the opportunity to share this with you. I studied this discourse this Passover, just a few weeks ago or a month ago, whatever. I studied over Passover, and I studied it, and my first thought was, I have to teach this. I mean, this is unbelievable. I have to teach it, and that's where we are right now. So, and I literally on Passover, the day after Passover, I wrote up the copy for it, and we got it to the designer, and that was it. Miracles. So, and that's where we are. So, just so you know, it's that's a long answer. Short answer is the Rebbe would speak these discourses. There was a team of scholars, high-level scholars, that would memorize word for word every word that the Rebbe said. And remember, it could be a 2-3 day holiday. And remember the whole 3 days. You can't write it down to the end. Not just Shabbat, which is, a few hours. If the Rebbe spoke Shabbat afternoon, till Havdalah, you got like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, depending on how long Shabbat is. Not 9 hours, a few hours. This is it could be, theoretically the first day of a holiday and the last day. This happened to be Achron Shal Pesach, so okay, it was also that night was Havdalah, and you could record it, transcribe it. They called them human encyclopedias or human tape recorders. We had Rabbi Simon Jacobson a few months ago, or in the fall, he headlined our annual dinner at Callan Fine Arts Center. Rabbi Simon Jacobson, one of my teachers, and Rabbi Simon Jacobson was one of these oral scribes who memorized the discourses, and then they wrote them down. They compared They obviously discussed. There was a team of them that made sure that they all, got it right. With collective, brilliance, it helps. And then they transcribed it. And then, I forgot the whole point. The main point is, before they published it, well, sometimes they would publish the transcripts, and that was an unofficial, based on the best of our memory, this is what we got. Then formal publications, like what we studied here, these were formally published, is the team took their transcripts, sent it to the Rebbe to look at, to edit. The Rebbe edited, they added footnotes, all that stuff, and then it was published. So we studied a formally published discourse. Mimer.
Rabbi?
Now you know.
The takeaway of this course, like it's more precious, the work of the Benanims and the Tzaddik. It just recalled to me that story about the Baal Shem Tov, like more than even the scholars at his table, he appreciated the prayers and the efforts of the people. Yes.
This is this is where Kabbalah gets so amazing, because there are many spiritual disciplines that say that the greatest thing is up there. Kabbalah and Hasidus says, you got it wrong. The greatest is down here. It's the struggle. The greatest place to find God is inside the struggle. That's literally what we said. The greatest miracle is the one that works with nature, where nature's still fighting. The greatest is, the greatest is the struggle. What I want to do is, let's see if we can pull this off. I'm going to, I should probably, no, I'm still being recorded. It's in my pocket. Okay, I'm going to walk through. I'm going to show you some stuff. See if we can pull this off. I'm purposely holding it high just in case anybody's around that doesn't want to be on camera. I'm respecting the wishes of those that may or may not want to be on camera. I figure if you see my ceiling, that doesn't mind. Let me tell you what I want to show you. I want to show you my bookshelf that has a fraction of the Rebbe's output of Torah. Let me show you. I don't even have the whole collection. Okay, you guys seeing this? You see all those books?
Yes.
Wow.
Fraction. A fraction. Maybe a quarter. Maybe a quarter.
Really?
Really?
All those books. All those books. All those books.
What?
All those books.
Amazing.
Wow.
Maybe a quarter. Maybe even less. Maybe even less. It's hard to describe how, I mean, it's not, I don't know. You can't imagine the Torah output, the scholarly output of one human being. It's immeasurable. We're talking about literally 300, 400, 500, 600 volumes of, not like easy breezy stuff. I'm talking about like incredible things.
Amazing.
Sichos and Maimarim, these talks, letters, thousands and thousands of letters. The Rebbe got more mail than the president.
Wow.
Yeah. You're talking about, you know how the Rebbe would read letters? I heard this from the secretaries. This is not Baba Mises. I heard this from, the Rebbe had many secretaries that had different roles. Some of them helped answer letters. There were secretaries for English letters, Hebrew letters, and Yiddish letters.
Wow.
The way the Rebbe wouldn't always write. Most of the time, the Rebbe wouldn't actually write the letter in response to the reply. The Rebbe would dictate the reply, and the secretaries would type it out. Or they would write notes and then type it out and then send it to the Rebbe to look over, make sure they got it right. And the Rebbe would sign off on it or correct it. Sometimes you would get a letter back typed up with the Rebbe's handwriting on it because the Rebbe wanted to add something in. Fine. That was like very special. You have something with an original, that's very cool. That's very cool. But let me tell you, I heard this from one of the secretaries. Said the Rebbe would The Rebbe would read the letters himself and then dictate the answers. The Rebbe would read a letter, and the Rebbe apparently, this is, again, it's not third hand, this is from a person that was there. The Rebbe was was a speed reader. And I could glance the page and get all the content. And the Rebbe took, I don't know if I can demonstrate this. This is how it was demonstrated to me. The Rebbe would take his hand almost and like kind of go on the paper, look at it, turn the page, boom, 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 almost like a scanner. Then the Rebbe would finish the letter, however long it was, maybe 1 page, 2 pages, 5 pages, whatever, would put it to the side and begin dictating a response while at the same time reading the next letter. Yeah, that's it. So look, I'll say this. We're very fortunate to have an incredible wealth of Torah, and I'm happy to listen. We're slowly but surely we're covering as much ground as we can.
We're honored that you're teaching us this. Thank you.
Wondering that.
I can't hear.
I know.
Good. Right. Good. So next time. So stay tuned. Next week, let me think. Next week is Memorial Day, correct? Next Monday is Memorial Day? Okay. So Memorial Day, we'll see what happens. There may be a Rosh Chodesh Society class for women, but we may move that because we scheduled it on Memorial Day with that. Okay. Stay tuned via email. I'll let you know about the next course, about the next big course, about the next small course, all that stuff. All right. But it's all the main course. Whatever course you're taking, it's never just the side. It's always the main course. That's the main thing you need to know. Thank you for joining me. If you want, yeah, why not? If you want a copy of the translation that I did, email me, and I'll reply with the translation. Deal?
It'd be fantastic.
Because otherwise, I said I would remember for three weeks already now, and it's not happening. So if you want it, just do that. I'll hit reply with the file. Okay, it's not the whole thing. I did about half of it, but you'll see. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Rob.
Awesome. All right, Lila Tov, be well.
Lila
And
Tov,
remember,
thank you
you
so
are
much.
the miracle. Make the miracle happen.
Lila Tov. Beautiful course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.